Learning power apps got you down? Well, just put on the training wheels, and it's much easier that way. Did you know that Microsoft has created a training template, sort of like the training wheels of sorts? Okay, so let me share my screen and show you what I'm talking about here. Okay, so if I open up, let's say we go to the apps, or let's go home within Power Apps. And what we can do is we can start with an app template. Now, we're not going to go through this because I have a whole video where I talk about this template, but I want to show you guys what it is I'm talking about. So if you go down here, these are all the templates. If you scroll down, you'll see one down here that says Power Apps Training. Now, don't confuse that with the one up here that says Power Apps Training for Office. That's something a little different, okay? And I'm going to rearrange myself so I don't cover up anything here. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down. So if you click on this, okay, it's going to bring up this training template. And Microsoft made this to help you guys learn, sort of like training wheels to learn Power Apps. You know, right when you start jumping into Power Apps, you get excited, want to learn Power Apps. This is what I did within the first week or two, and it was very confusing for me when I was trying to learn it. So, just to show you, if you open it up, this is what it looks like, and it's broken down with many different lessons here. Okay. Now, if you go to YouTube and do a search for Darren Neese training template, this is a video that I created for you guys. Okay. So let me rearrange things here. And if you're to open this up, of course, I'm going to pause it if it's not paused. And this is an hour and 20-minute video where I pretty much go through each of the lessons with you guys. And I'll tell you guys a story. I was working with one of my friends this week, and he wants to learn Power Apps. Okay, and I told him about that video. I'm like, hey, yeah, just go and do the Microsoft training app here. And what he encountered was, Power Apps kicks you out every few minutes, or not every few minutes, so many hours, like 8 or 10 hours, it will sort of kick you out. The session will expire and things won't work. You try to go back in there, and things are sort of a mess. So what I wanted to do is create a newer and improved training template for you guys. Okay. Something that I believe will work better and will cover more things than their training template. Now, the thing's been out there for years. I'm very thankful that Microsoft did this. But like many things that come out, over time, they sort of get old and crusty, and they're not really keeping up with the times. So maybe they'll redo that one. But this will be my attempt at creating a newer and better one for you guys. And I am going to make this template available to you guys for free. Now, there is a link at the top of the screen. If you see it up top, it says tiny URL/power platform community. So that's a little community that I started, and it's just a place for people to ask and answer questions and view content and interact. I think a community is so important when you're trying to learn something like Power Apps or the Power Platform. Okay, so this thing will the app that I create today will be available on there for free. Okay, so just want to let you guys know that. Of course, it's not uploaded yet, but after I'm done with this session, I'll upload it. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to go back. Okay. So this is the home screen for Power Apps. Now, I am targeting this material right here for the absolute beginner of Power Apps, and we're going to create this training template, and we're going to get past the basics pretty quick and start getting into the intermediate material. If you checked out the last week's live stream, we went over 20 Power Apps functions that you got to master in order to become a Power Apps master. Okay, it's a very popular video, and I think people really appreciate going through one thing at a time: functions, controls, topics, and this training template is going to do that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a brand new project here. Okay, so I'm going to click on Create, and I'm going to start with a blank app. Okay, now there are three flavors of Power Apps. The one that I like is my favorite, and probably if you're following my channel, watching this video, it's true in your case. The Canvas app is probably what you're most interested in. But there are three flavors. That's just one of the three flavors of Power Apps. You also have a model driven application. Do you see this right here in the middle? Model driven app. Okay. So that is a no code solution. A Canvas app is a low code. This is a no code solution where you don't have so much control over the user interface. And because of that, it makes it much less interesting to me because as a software developer, what I love about creating apps is using my creativity and creating really cool intuitive interfaces for the users. And model driven apps are meant more for back office users, let's say application administrators, that type of thing. That's how I would categorize that. That may not be the official categorization that Microsoft uh, has slated for model driven, but yeah, you can create very good what I would call CRUD screens. So create CRUD. So create, read, update, delete. So if you've got a database table that you want to go in and add, edit, delete something, model driven is great for that. Okay. Now the third flavor here on the right side is a portal. Okay. So that's a public facing website. It's very different than model driven. Model driven is much different than Canvas apps. So Microsoft is repurposing this whole portal thing as Power Pages. Okay, so you've heard of Power Apps, Power BI, Power Automate, Power Virtual Agents. Now you got Power Pages. Okay, I believe over time this will probably go away. It won't even be in Power Apps because it's Power Pages, right? Now I don't know that to be official, but so most of what I talk about on this channel is the Canvas app. So that's what we're going to create here today, guys. Okay, so I'm going to click Create. Okay, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say Power Apps Training Wheels. Okay, our training template. Okay. Um, yeah, I want to. Let's see here. I thought training wheels was a good name for this because what we're doing here is if you have any problems with Power Apps learning it from the get go, you're an absolute beginner. Whenever you're learning something new, why not make it easier on yourself? So I'm going to click create here. So what I'm going to do, guys, for my accelerator students, if you want to know about more about my accelerator program, the link at the top of the screen, the tiny URL, you can learn more about that. But I invite all my accelerator students in on my live streams. So just a reminder to accelerator students, if you are showing your video, I'm probably going to bring you on so you can interact. If you don't want to interact, then just turn off your video feed. So I see a few of you in here. Jeff, I'm going to bring you in. This is good. So Jeff, you would say that you're pretty much an absolute beginner in Power Apps, wouldn't you say?
Absolute novice. Absolutely.
Oh, this is perfect. This is absolutely perfect. So I'm creating a template here. It's going to be like training wheels to learning Power Apps. It's going to make it super easy. So I had a friend that said the Microsoft template was getting them all messed up. He had to keep going in there, starting from scratch over and over again. I'm like, well, maybe there's a better solution to this. Okay, so this is a brand new Canvas application with a blank canvas here sitting in front of us. Okay, and what I want to do is I want to create one screen at a time for each step of learning Power Apps. So the first step that I would tell anybody trying to learn Power Apps is this: save early, save often. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this bigger. Okay. Here we go. Now, what do I mean by save early, save often? So we just created a new Power Apps application. So this is something you should do with every single Power Apps application that you create. Step number one, save early, save often. Okay. So at the top of the screen, you should see settings for the whole project. So I want to show you guys this. I'm going to click on settings. Okay. And here are the general settings. If I scroll down a little bit, look at this: auto save, save changes every 2 minutes. This is a browser level setting and it is on. So that would lead one to believe saving your application really isn't all that important because Power Apps has got my back. It's going to be saving every 2 minutes. But you know what? It's really not. It hasn't even saved it once yet. Okay. And the reason for that is that we haven't saved it initially. And Power Apps doesn't warn you about this. Sometimes it pops up with tips and stuff. I wish they would pop that up for beginners. So it's so vitally important. This might seem very simple and rudimentary, but what you need to do is go in the upper right corner and click that little save icon. Now, you would think that since we created this app with a name, that it would have created it initially for us. But because we haven't saved it yet, it won't start creating the auto saves every 2 minutes. Now, so that's the save early part. And then the save often. What do I mean by save often? Because again, it saves it every 2 minutes for you, right? Well, something that you may not know yet, you haven't realized yet about Power Apps, is that its undo feature doesn't work half the time. Okay, so if you're in here and you move things around, okay, now look at this. There's an undo. If I hit undo, what happens? Okay, it undid once. Okay, and a lot of times you'll find that it just doesn't work. So what happens with Power Apps is it's saving every 2 minutes. But within Power Apps, it has a version history of all the little changes that you make. Okay. Let me open up a new tab. Okay. Go into Power Apps here. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go try to find that app that I just created. It's called Power Apps Training Wheels. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the ellipsis, the three dots here, and I'm going to go into details for this app that I just created. Okay. So we get this little screen here. What's really useful about this screen, it gives you a link. So if you want to share this app with somebody, you can send them this link. Okay. But what I want to show you guys this morning is that we have versions. Okay. So there's only one version. And let's look at the time 10:10 a.m. And right now it's 10:12 a.m. So you notice it hasn't been saving. And also those autosaves, they don't show up here. There's no version history of the autosaves. So that is the reason why. Let's say I move this around, I hit Control S, which is a shortcut for clicking on that little save icon in the upper right corner. Okay. And let's move this label down again, and I'll hit the save button again. Okay. Now, after it's done saving, it is done saving. I'm going to go back over to my other tab. Okay. Now it looks like there's still just one version. Now, if I refresh the browser here, okay, now there's three versions. Okay, notice that. So let's say we're in there and we mess something up and we're in there for an hour and we're just messing things up. And then you realize, oh, an hour ago it was working better than what it's doing now. So I want to revert back there. And you try to hit the Control Z or hit the undo and it doesn't work. What are you to do? Well, if you were saving often manually, you will have these little restore points. Okay, so there's version two. Let's say version two was working great. Well, I can click on the ellipsis and say restore. It will create a new copy of that and put it at the very top. Okay, so it's this version history that's so nice within Power Apps. It's all built into Power Apps. Okay, so save early, save often. So what do you think of that, Jeff? Do you have any questions, comments? Do you think any of that's weird or interesting?
No, it's good advice. First of all, I found myself having the same issue. Was working on my app last weekend, and then I went to it one night this week, and I found there was a couple pages where I must have turned it off before I hit save, and the last few things that I did not save, so I had to redo the work. So yeah, I agree. This is a good tip.
Yeah. And it's so disheartening if anyone's ever done coding or any type of development on something, or even a Word document. But I think Word is really good about recovering. But as a software developer, as a computer programmer, I would start coding, and let's say the electricity goes out, or back then, gee whiz, I had Windows 95 when I first started out, and Windows would freeze up, and it's like, man, you really got to get in the habit of hitting that Control S. So it's really disheartening to realize that you have hours or a day worth of work that you have to redo. That's completely just vanishes in the smoke. So that's why it's so important. I make it such a big deal about, and I mention it so often. So, all right. So we have this one screen, and that's the first lesson. Okay. Now, I'm going to bring Microsoft's training template down here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I cover all this stuff that they do, and then some. Okay. Now, something that you'll notice when you're new with Power Apps is, did you know you can also test your app by right-clicking the canvas and holding down? Um, you can test your app right on the canvas by holding down Alt. So this is something that just keeps popping up. I always tell people like, hey, just click on this thing so it doesn't pop up again. If you already know it. Now we'll cover this in a few minutes, but using the Alt to temporarily run your app. So I'm going to click OK. Okay. So one of the first things that it teaches you is how to run your application. Okay. So what I'm going to do is we will do this. I'm going to create a new screen. Okay. And what we're going to do is, you know what? I'm going to copy this little label here and just paste it over here. And I'll talk about what I want to say here. So we'll say we've got F5. Okay. We've got, which runs your application, by the way, it's a shortcut. And then you've got the run button. And then you also have Alt key. Okay, so I'm going to hit enter. So these are the three ways that you can run your application. So something that I'm going to do, since we just have a label which doesn't really interact very much with the user, I'm going to add over a little button. Okay, so I'm going to click a button here. And I'm going to, do you see this little run key in the upper right corner? I'm going to go ahead and click run. Okay. Now I can hover over a button. I can click on it. You see that the application's running, right? So I could click on this little X in the upper right corner. So you've got two different modes within Power Apps. You have design time and you have run time. Right now we're in run time. And if I click on this X, we're back in design time. Okay. Now that's not an official Power Apps terminology, but that is a phrase that I learned within doing Visual Basic back in the day. You were developing, and then when you ran it, you were in runtime. You know, so that's what I've always called that. So on your keyboard, you hit F5, and it will do the same thing as hitting that run button. And you've hit F5 once it's running. It's a toggle. Okay, so it takes you back to design time. Now, what you can also do as it was telling me on the other screen, you guys probably saw, if you hold down the Alt key on your keyboard and click on the button, you see that's it's sort of running it right here. It doesn't take up the full screen like it normally does, but I'm holding down the Alt key and I can interact with things as if it was running. So those are the three ways in which you can run it. Now, what I'm going to do is hit Control S, make sure we've got a good save here. Okay. There is another way that we could run this. Okay. And that is, we'll go, so we're looking at the details for this app in the other tab. And what we can do is just click on play. Look at that. Save early, save often. Okay. Now we have no way of getting to that other screen. Okay. But this is a way that a user would run this is they would have the link perhaps that you've sent them. They have it as a bookmark, or you have a link out on your internet that links to it. Okay. So the user can run it, in that way. Okay. So any questions at all? How to run your app and these basics here. Any, any thoughts, Jeff?
No, I think it's pretty straightforward there.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to keep things as basic as possible. All right. So the next thing that we're going to cover, okay, is just the basics of controls. Okay, so I'm going to add in a new screen here. Okay, so we have screen one, two, and three. So here on this third screen, I think I will bring over this label. Okay, and I will say control basics. Okay, number one, what is a control? A control is an object within Power Apps that you can add to your app. You can add to a blank canvas or a screen here, and it has some type of user interface element. Okay, so this little label here um, is a control within Power Apps. Well, here a few minutes ago, we added a button. Well, that's a control. Okay, and then let's talk about the control just a little bit here. So there are two main things that you need to know about a button. Number one is changing the text. Okay, right now it just says button. We can go over here for button and actually change this new text. Okay, or you can just double click on the button. And we'll say better text. Okay, got that. Now the next thing to do here is that you can go into advanced. Okay, and then there's an on select. Okay, and on select, and we could put some code in here. Okay, now I need to keep an eye on the comments. So yeah, yeah. So I got a lot of comments out. I'm looking for stuff that is relevant to what we're covering here today. Um, so here's a question. We're talked about running our apps. That is a really good question. Can guest users run apps? Well, what exactly is a guest user? Somebody might wonder. A guest user is somebody outside your organization. And yes, they can run your Power Apps app outside the organization, but it's a little bit of a hassle because they have to be added to your Azure Active Directory as a guest user, and then they could actually use it. And sometimes people want to create an app and have, let's say, their customers or anonymous users use their app, and that's not how Power Apps was designed for use. It was designed to be used inside your organization, even though guest users can, but they have to be set up as guest users. So, and it looks like Minty is actually giving more details about that in the chat. Very cool, guys. All right, so I am going to show my screen again here. Okay, so what are some other controls that we might want to add here? Let's add in a text input. Okay, a text input. And then I'll add another label. Okay. And sometimes I like to put borders around. So the right side of the screen here is the properties that you can change on a control. Okay. So if you click on text, you can actually modify it up here in the expression bar, or you can actually type it right here. Okay. Say new label. And you can change other things like fonts, so on and so forth. Now, one of the things I like to do is actually give it a border. So I'm going to give it a little bit of a border so I can see where it starts and ends there. And a text input, if I were to run this and actually type in this, you see I can type in this, but on a label, I can click on it, I can select it, but I can't type in there. So that's pretty much the difference between a label and a text box. Now, what we could do is we could take the text out of this and actually display it somewhere else. Okay, so this is label two. So you see over here on the left side, we have this tree view. Okay, and this label displays text. And what I want to get at is this text box. So it's called text input one. Okay, so I'm going to grab the name of that control by selecting on the name and hitting Control C. Now, over the label, instead of having something here I would call a string literal, it's a literal string. enclosed in double quotes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make this dynamic. And I'm going to say whatever that text input was, we want to get at what was entered inside of it. Okay. So we'll say dot text. Okay. I'll make this label a little bigger. Okay. Now, what you'll notice if we run this as we type in here, 1, 2, 3, so it changes dynamically very quickly as this changes. Okay. So that is a concept called control linking. Okay. So also for this button here, if we wanted that text to be dynamic, we could do the same thing. So I'm going to click on that label. There's text input one dot text. I'm going to copy that. And then for the text of this button here, I'm going to click on the text word. Okay. Notice we have this code up here. Right now it's a string literal. And I'm just going to paste in what I had there. Okay. Run it. Do that. This is like basic control linking. And it's really important to wrap your mind around it, get used to it because you're going to use it all the time with Power Apps, all the time. Yeah. So I'm going to go back to design time mode. Okay. Now let's add a few more controls that you might want to use. Okay. So let's add in something like, here's a rectangle. That could be very useful within Power Apps. I'm going to add over a rectangle here. And one of the things that you might want to do with the rectangle is change the color. Okay. So I'm going to click on this and change it to maybe to a light green. Okay. And then what you might have is you might want to have something that looks like a container, maybe like a border around some controls. Now, if I were to try to make this as like a little visual grouping here, I want it to be underneath these controls. Now, what you can do is go over to this rectangle and say, okay, move this down. Okay. I could say send it back, which would send it right back. But let's say there's stuff even behind that that you still want to be behind that. You wouldn't want to say send to back. You could just send backward and it will go one at a time. Now there is a shortcut key on your keyboard, which is control square bracket. Left will make it go down. Control right square bracket will bring it up. Okay. Yeah. All right, very good. So that is a control there. Now, something else that you can do is let's look at some of these other controls. Now, they're all categorized in here. So what you can do is let's say we're just looking for an image to display. Okay, there we go. It's under media. I'm going to click on image. And there we go. Now, something that I can do. We don't have any images added to this project yet, but here for the image, it's displaying a sample image. Okay, so that is a Power Apps keyword, sample image. So if you ever need a sample image for something, just use that keyword sample image and that image will pop up. Now, if I tie into a function called user with opening and closing parentheses there, and I say image, will pull in my image that I have set up for this Office 365 environment. Now, this is a guy that is a character in the movie Kill Bill that I found to be a funny character, and so I made that my profile photo. So there we've added an image. What about an icon? Let's say we wanted to have a save button or a save icon here on the screen. So I could click on this downward chevron here and I could look for, say, icons. Well, here's a bunch of icons we could add. Okay, let me show you a trick about adding icons. Let's just add the first one that comes up. Open this up. Now, I just say open the first one because what I like to do is go over here to the right side, open up this 3D printing where it says 3D printing, which is the name of this icon. And you can actually look through them. The icons are much bigger over here, and I'm going to rearrange myself so I'm not covering anything up. What I like also here is I can just search for save. And I can change it there. Now, something that someone might point out is if you're trying to bring over an icon, what you could do maybe is type save, and then you've got that automatically. So that is something else that you could do, but you may not know what Power Apps calls it, you know. So that's why it's nice to know that. Okay, so I'm gonna hit Control S, make sure we're saving on a regular basis here. Um, okay.
Darren, I put
So,
in icons on my new app, and I changed the color. My text on the page was just a little bit lighter of a blue, and so I
uh-huh.
changed the color of the icons to match the text that was on the page. So that can be done
Okay.
as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Now you're talking about just changing the color of the icon or using a theme?
No, I just the text that I had used on the page was just a little bit lighter of a blue, so I just wanted to change it so it would match, just so it'd be
Okay.
aesthetically, there would be some continuity there with the aesthetics of the page.
Yeah. Yeah, whenever I build apps, I always wanna make sure there's no clash of colors, that there's a nice theme. Now, I like to when I build applications, like a real application, I always like to use my application template. I call it the jumpstart kit. And I've got some videos. I got a playlist on my channel that shows you how to build your own. And I always like to use dynamic theming. But something that I should point out here is that here at the top, if I click on this gray area here on the side, it deselects everything. And then I can see something over here called theme. Okay, you can open this up and the Power Apps default is this blue theme, and it's always been this blue theme for since the beginning. Okay, so now you can use other ones. I actually don't recommend using these themes, but if you're because I like to use dynamic themes. Okay, but if you're a beginner, you're just in here trying to get to know Power Apps. If you are going to use a theme, what I recommend doing is using the soft blue. I really like this. If you're going to use a default theme, okay. Now look what it did. It changed some of this to sort of match each other. Now, if I click on this label here, as you mentioned, Jeff, I could go over here and oh, here's a blue color that matches that. Okay, so that's something good to know there as well. All right, so um, the next topic that we should cover is navigating from one screen to another, because if we publish this app and how to use it, they're just going to see this screen like this, and they're like, "Okay, what does that mean? What do I do here?" And so we actually have 3 screens, and what I want to do here is at least have a button that will go onto the next screen. Okay, maybe even have a home screen, a next, that type of thing. So what I think I am going to do is let's add over 2 buttons. We'll put them at the bottom here. And once you have a button, you can just copy and paste it. And you've got another one there. Okay. So for this button here, I'll say next lesson. And here we'll say back. And something else that might be helpful is to have a home. Okay. So on the next lesson here, what I'm going to do for the on select. Now, if you don't see on select right here, it's a drop down. Go in and find on select. Okay. Now, how you navigate from one screen to another is you simply use a navigate function. So I'm going to type navigate, opening parenthesis, and the next one will be screen two. There is screen two. And then this screen one, we're going to make this to be the home screen. So I'm going to click on home. And for the on select, I'm going to say navigate and say screen one. Now let's just, I'm going to hit save and then run. And I'm going to position things so I'm not covering anything up here. And if I click on this next lesson, let's see what happens. Oh, they went to the next screen. That's good. Now this button doesn't do anything. Okay, so I'm going to click X, go back home, and you notice that that navigate function does navigate us to a different screen. And if we were on a different screen, this home button would take us right back to this screen. But because we're already on it, it's not going to really do anything for us. Okay. So let's talk about a different way of navigating, which is to use the back function. And the back function takes you back to the previous screen that you were on. Okay, there we go, back. So if I were to run this and hit back, it should take me back to the previous screen. Okay. And it's not doing that. That's sort of weird thing, huh? Well, the reason why it's not taking us back to the previous screen is because when you're in Power Apps as a developer, as an app creator, when you click around on these screens, okay, it's not really adding to the navigational history. Okay. So the user actually needs to be able to navigate to a different screen. And then if they click back, that back function will take them to the previous screen. So what I'm going to do to sort of illustrate this is I'm going to copy these three buttons, these three controls at the bottom. I'll hit Control C. Okay. I'm going to go over to screen 2 and I'm going to paste these three there. Okay. Now let's look. The home screen will take us back to screen 1. Back will take us back. But the next lesson shouldn't take us to screen 2 at this point. It should take us to the next one, which is screen 3. I'm going to copy these three buttons again, go to screen 3 and paste them here. Make this guy a little smaller. I don't need him so big. All right. So the next will be, let's see, screen 4. Now I'm going to go up here and just click on new screen at the top. Okay. Now there's a screen 4. Then I'll click on screen 3 here. And for the next lesson, I will just say 4. Okay, so I have something to go to. So now I'm gonna save it and maybe move myself to the side. Maybe that will help out a little bit with the screen real estate. Okay, so if I click on home, it takes me back home. And then I go to next lesson. So that's screen 2. Next lesson, next lesson. So we got 4 screens and now we can't get back, of course, right? So I'm going to paste those 3 buttons here again. And because we don't have a screen 5, I'm just going to comment out that one there. Okay. And I'm going to run this. Now, if I hit back on this button here, it's going to take me back. Hit back again, it's going to take me back. And one more time, it's going to take me back. So now you guys know how to navigate around. Okay.
So, Darren, a quick question on that.
Yes,
So,
please.
let's say you change the name, the screen names. For instance, if you have a screen that's called customers, so then in
Mhm.
the parentheses, you would just put customers instead of screen 1 or 2 or 3.
Yes. So if you renamed this screen 1 to be customers, what's nice about Power Apps is it actually changes it for you. So I'll go into screen 1 and call this customers. Okay. Then I'll go over, let's say, to screen 2. And on this home, notice what it says, navigate customers.
Good.
Okay. So it's really dynamic. I really like that. A lot of programming languages, programming platforms aren't like that. If you rename something, you got to go back to all the other references and rename it or use some type of feature in the coding environment to do that. So it can be a pain in the butt. Um, so I'm going to change this back to screen 1. And my plans for this training template is to have all kinds of lessons, not just 20 lessons that the Microsoft template has, but we're going to have maybe 100 different lessons. And what I want to do is dynamically refer to these screens here. So I'm going to just keep them with the default names there. And over time, it's going to become evident why I'm going to keep them that. That's not a recommended best practice for screen names. You should have spaces in there. You should say something like you were mentioning customers screen. You should call it customers space screen. because there might be some people that have some accessibility issues. They might be using a screen reader to read off the screen. So, in a real application, not the training wheel application, but in a real application, you want to be somewhat descriptive in your screen names. But for now, I'll just keep them with these ordinal positions. So over here on screen 4, what I'm going to call this or have here as text is navigation. Okay, so we know what we covered on that little lesson there. Okay. Okay, let's add yet a new screen here. Okay. And here, this will be screen 5. And what I want to cover here are the basics of formulas within Power Apps. Okay. Now I'm going to go back to screen 4 and make sure this next lesson actually goes to screen 5. And I'll copy this little label here and I'll put it right here. Let's say, and what I would like to do is add in some sliders here. One slider. And so what a slider control is a way for a user to be able to pick a number or to be able to change some type of numeric value very easily without having to type in a number. Okay, maybe there's a range 1 to 100. If you click on the control, you'll notice over here on the side you have a min, a max, and a default. Okay, so for this little slider one, I'm going to use something like price. So I'm going to add in a label and put a label beside this. And I'm going to call this price. Okay. And we should probably name our controls here. If we're going to use our controls in any of the expression bars or in code, you should really name these things. I'm going to say SLD for slider, short for slider, and I'm going to call this price. Okay. Now, I also want to create one for quantity. Okay. Let's say we're creating a shopping cart type of application. Okay. I'm going to select these two controls. Now, if you select one control and you want to select another one in addition to, you hold down the control key on your keyboard and then click on the second one. That allows you to select more than one control at a time. I'm going to hit Control C, Control V to paste those two controls. And this one I will have, okay. And for this slider, I'm going to call this SLD. And let's put a limit on how many somebody can add. Okay, so we're going to have the max be, let's say 15. And the default will be just 1, 0 to 15 there. And then what I want to do is add in a little label here. And for a label, we can give it a nice background color. In Power Apps, that's actually called fill, the background color of a control. And I want this to be a numeric value, which will be in there here in a moment. I'll add in a new label beside it. Okay. And then here I'm going to say total cost. Maybe even put a little colon in there. Okay. Total cost. Now, inside this label, now 2 lessons ago, we learned how to link up one control to another. Okay. So we have here, we could get at the numeric values of these sliders by typing SLD. Okay, look at that. We have all of our slider controls because we name them with SLD as a prefix. Okay, so I'm going to get at the price. Okay, now you see what it did here. It actually put 81 here at the bottom, 81, and it's referencing the value property off of that control. And because value is the default property for that control, it's just going to go ahead and give us that. Now, before you weren't able to do that, you always had to say dot value. Microsoft changes things up over time, so that you don't have to now. I always like to put that in there to be very explicit in what I'm typing in the coding window there. Okay, but what we want to do here for total cost is we want to take the price and multiply it by the quantity. Okay, well this is a lot like doing some type of a formula in Excel. You can take a value of something, use the star or the asterisk, okay, shift 8, and then reference SLD quantity value. Okay, and it's going to multiply those two things. And now it's not very evident. If I were to run this and change things around here, okay, it's not very evident what the value is of these two unless we hover over them. Okay, so if you're going to create an app, it's always good to create an interface that's very intuitive for the user so they don't have to think too much while using the application. Um, I'm going to select these two labels, hit Control C, Control V beside them here. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say SLD price. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is put in a little dollar sign and then splice this in. Okay. So there's a dollar sign, dot value. Okay. And then I'm going to do something similar for the quantity without a dollar sign, SLD dot value. Okay. So now we can actually see the two values as they're changed. Okay. So that pretty much shows you how you can use the expression bar to construct a formula. So we're actually creating a Power Apps code. Okay. Now, this particular code or this expression that we've created, um, you don't typically think of as code that is run in a traditional sense. So there's two different types of code within Power Apps. There is something called declarative. Okay, declarative. So for total cost, if I click on this total cost label up here for text, we declare that the text of this label is this string literal. Okay, that's very declarative. Okay, and even over here, this is declarative as well. It's a dynamic, it's an expression, not just a string literal. So it's more dynamic, but it's still declarative. Okay. And the next thing that I want to show you guys will be the next lesson, will be the other type of code in Power Apps, which is called imperative. Imperative means you want something to happen, okay, rather than just stating that I want this label to have something in there, okay? So any questions on this declarative type of code that we've done here, the expressions? I'm looking at the comments. I'm listening to Jeff if you have any questions, comments before we move on.
No, I like this. This sliders control
Yeah,
makes things real easy to use. I know last year when I was vehicle shopping, a couple of the different car sales sites use sliders to you can set the range of the cost that how much you want to spend and year of the vehicle, that kind of thing.
yeah. Yeah, I like that. Like, yeah, like maybe like a filter or something like, hey, let
Right,
me look at cars between these 2 years or between this price or,
right.
yeah, sliders are great. I really like them. Yeah, I don't see any questions or comments about this particular lesson. So I will move on to the next one. Okay. So you notice that whenever I try to create a new screen, let's say I've got this label selected. You see up here at the top, I don't see anything that says new screen. Now you could always go over here and say new screen. But if you're looking for it up here, you almost have to click on this little gray area and then you'll see new screen. And what I like about this and not so much about this is I guess they've changed it here at the beginning. I only saw these and I didn't see templates, So maybe they just changed this up here. And what I was going to say was that's why I like to use this because it has templates, but you can do it either place. All right, I'm going to click on a new blank screen here. This will be screen 6. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to screen 5. Actually, I need to go back to screen 4 to get all these things here. Control C, screen 5. We probably don't need that there. And then the next lesson will be 6. Okay. Go to 6. I'll paste. And now we will say imperative code. Okay, maybe over here on screen 5, I should say formulas, and I'll say declarative code. Okay. I will hit save and I will run this. I just want to test out, make sure all my buttons are working properly. So now we have imperative code. Well, you know what? You guys already know about imperative coding because we've already sort of added it. So you've got a button here and we put a navigate. That is imperative code. Whenever you see an on select or an on hidden or an on visible, any properties that have like on select, it starts with on, you know it is imperative type of code. You're getting it to go do something. You're not declaring something. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a button is a great way to add some imperative code. Okay. I'm going to bring over button here. And I'm going to say, hello world. Now, if you ever try to learn any type of programming language out there, any type of development platform, typically that is really a classic first lesson. And it took us a few steps to actually get to this part here within Power Apps, but which is to say hello to the user, say hello world. Okay. So what I'm going to do is click on this button here, and there's the on select. We're going to write some imperative type of code. There is a function, you're going to learn a new function here. It's called notify. Okay. So if you know any type of JavaScript, there's a function called alert. So if you need something that like sort of pops up on the screen and says something, notify is that version, okay, of communicating to the user very easily, having something pop. Now it's not going to pop up in the middle of the screen, thankfully. But notify is going to expect something to be displayed here or something to be passed in here. So I'm going to say hello world. Okay. Now I'm going to run the application and I'm going to click on hello world. Look at that. And it just says hello world at the top. And just keeping an eye on the comments, looking for anything that's related to what we're talking about. Do we need to be cautious when we reference a control in another screen? That's actually a really good question. I'm going to try to move this stuff around here so I'm not covering that up. Um, I would say most of the time, no. Um, if you reference a control on a different screen, that it might sort of be an indicator that you might need to create a variable, either a global variable, which I try to stay away from as much as possible, or you create a context variable and pass it into another screen that needs it. That's what I like to do. Um, I don't think it's like a really big danger to reference a control, but let's say that that screen that has a control that you're trying to reference hasn't been loaded up yet. Well, sort of force that screen to be loaded up into memory. Okay, maybe just keep that in mind. Chances are, if you have like a wizard or if you have a series of screens that steps through a workflow, is that you're referencing a control on a screen that was already set, already loaded. So perhaps that's not that big of an issue. So um, that's my official answer to that question there. Okay, so we saw that it did do the hello world up there, which was good. Now it's just a little gray box. And something I want to show you since we're talking about the notify, okay, is we can use a comma to pass in additional optional parameters. So there's this notification type. So whenever you're inside of Power Apps, you'll notice here at the top, it's going to try to help you. It's going to show you all these parameters that you could pass in. So it says notification type. So I'm actually going to type in notification type. Oh, look, there it is. And it's what's called an enumerated value. So notification type, we can get at four different things, either an error, information, success, or warning. Okay. So if I said success, which is probably what I would want to like if you hit save and you're trying to tell the user, hey, everything was saved properly. You probably want that to show up as a success, to show up in green. So I'm gonna hit run, hit that. Looks a little nicer. Like, hey, everything is okay. You know. Um, let's see what this looks like as the other values. Okay. Now I do know information is the default, so it's going to just have it a gray bar like it was the first time. So I'm not going to show you that one. In error, I believe that displays it in pink. Yeah, there we go. And then we have a warning. What does warning show up as? Yellow. Very nice. And you notice that thing stays up there for a little while. Now you can actually control that with another optional parameter. So there's all the notification types. If I hit comma here, I can give it a number, which is milliseconds of how long you want that thing to stay up there. Okay. So if I want it to be 1 second, it would be just 1000. I think the default is either 3 or 5 seconds. Um, so just keep in mind you can control that. So that's imperative coding. Okay. Imperative coding. Now, I'm going to click on screen 5 and show you a little bit more imperative coding that you can add. Okay. So screen 5 is selected. And the imperative coding properties, a lot of times you can access them over here on the advanced tab on the right side of the screen. Advanced. Okay. Look at this. We have on visible. If I click on visible, there's the code for on visible. It's blank. And we have on hidden. Typically for a screen, when a screen loads up for the on visible property, whenever that thing fires, you might want to put code in there that initializes values and controls and sets things up for that screen, initializes things for that screen that needs to be there as the user is first opening that screen. Okay. And then for the on hidden, typically you want to put stuff in on hidden to sort of clean things up or to reset things back for the next time the user goes back to that screen. If you want to reset, sometimes you don't want it to be reset. Okay. So I just wanted to let you know about the on visible and the on hidden there. Okay. Now, if you click on a slider here, look at this. A lot of controls do have these imperative properties on change. If this changes, do you have some code that you want to have? Maybe you want to have it saved to a database. Okay. You could do that. Or if it's just selected. Okay. Um, okay, so any questions at all about imperative, declarative, any of the stuff that we've covered here? So I'm keeping an eye on the comments. Okay. Very good. Very good.
If you're getting anything helpful out of this, a comment or even a like really helps the channel and lets people like you know this is good content. Much appreciated.
All right, so just keeping an eye on the comments here. So let me know in the chat, in the comments below, what topics do you guys feel should be covered next? So I am excited about getting into data, connecting to data sources, bringing over galleries, teaching all about the forms and everything. But first, we need to make sure we have all the really nitty gritty basics covered really well, even before we get to that. So I want to make sure that we have all of that covered. So yeah, so let me know in the comments below.
For some reason, YouTube thinks you're going to like this video next. Let's see if they're right. Or you can select this playlist, which I've selected for you based on the content you're currently watching. Guys, gotta hurry. Click one of them. Otherwise, YouTube's gonna autoplay some other video, which you probably don't want.